Hey everybody, it is the Mead Truth. We are live Thursday night. Me and Mark are both right here, ready to get this evening started with a couple of interesting topics tonight. I think the biggest thing to hit the news, which came out today, was the Supreme Court ruling. So kind of looking forward to talking about that tonight.
Yeah, I mean, it's this is why we had this. This ruling was put off because
they were waiting on the
Constitution. Were waiting on the constitutional amendment to see if that was going to pass. It didn't pass. But the Supreme Court said, listen, on what they had there was two different sides to it. So the first side is that the providers, so there were two different laws. There was the trigger law, and then there was the 6-month ban. I'm sorry, the six week ban.
After 6 weeks, you can't have an abortion.
You can't have an abortion after 6 weeks. So the 6-week ban, and so they held up the 6-week ban. These were the lawsuit that's in the courts right now is from the providers. So the Supreme Court said that the providers don't have a standing on the 6-week ban law. Okay, but they said they do have. Now, what it does say is it says this. It says, has ruled that the state's abortion ban will remain in place. Hold on. The abortion will continue to save babies from abortion. It will remain in place against a abortion lawsuit for anybody beyond 6 weeks. So anybody that's beyond 6 weeks, they are saved right now. That's right. That's right. So that calls into question is the trigger law, which was triggered by, the reason it's called the trigger law is because it was a law that was triggered by if Roe versus Wade was ever overturned, which we know that it was overturned last summer. And so that triggered basically a widespread ban on abortions. Well, the providers are saying that they had undue harm from that law because they lost income, right? I can't believe it's coming down to dollars and cents that, we want to be able to kill babies for money. That's basically what the doctors are arguing, or the providers are arguing. I don't want to say doctors, but it's abortion providers.
They were funded by taxpayer dollars.
So now that's gone, and so I was really happy that they upheld the 6-week ban because, really and truly that's by far the most of the abortions are done after 6 weeks. So now we just have to figure out how to.
The interesting part of this is that she said after she turned it back over, she said it was wrong to halt enforcement of the bans. It was wrong to say that you cannot do this anymore. It was wrong for them to say that you cannot do this anymore. That's what the Supreme Court justice was saying, and the July appeal. So, which means that it's still now in place. You can do the bans.
Correct. Ban. Yeah. So,
but what she did say,
pending the legislation.
Now, pending any legislation to change the law, or. She said that it did leave the door open to hearing a future challenge on whether the right to abortion exists by implication under the Kentucky Constitution. So now that it's gone back to the circuit court, they've got to come back with this interpretation that it exists by implication under the Constitution.
Right, and that's what we were trying to identify, that there was no implication. Of abortion, but at the same time, the amendment was also saying that there's no implication in the law, but it also didn't say that a legislature couldn't come later and say that abortion was legal, right? So nobody was trying to write in the Constitution that abortion was banned across the board. What they were trying to do was simply clarify that there is no implication of a right to an abortion in the Constitution of the Kentucky Constitution.
Which is interesting that you say that, because in Justice Lambert ruled Thursday that the clinics don't have standing to challenge the laws on behalf of their patients, but do have standing to argue that the state's abortion bans violate protections in the state's constitution. So that's where, I think Nancy was doing all that work, because we could implicitly
That's right.
state that I'm sorry, but that's not a right of you as a citizen of Kentucky.
Yeah, because right now they're saying that because the Constitution doesn't say the word abortion or whatever, they're going to be able to try to say it does somehow, that there's some inherent right there. And that sometimes that works on the federal level because, the Constitution, the United States Constitution says if it's not explicitly written here, then it's left up to the states, which is what Roe versus Wade violated, right? It violated the state's right because it wrote something into law that wasn't in law and wasn't allowed by the Constitution. And it held up for all those years. What was it, 40, 50 years?
Right.
50 years. And
well, even Matt Kuhn says in argument for the state under, obviously, Cameron's office. And Cameron even commented that, claims from pro-abortion group laws are causing irreparable harm and must be blocked. He refuted those claims.
Yeah.
And then Matt Kuhn's argued to the justices, not to invent a non-existent right to abortion in the state's constitution, as Roe v. Wade mistakenly did. And in his direct quote, he said, they're asking this court to hold, they being the two entities, EMW Women's Surgical Center and Planned Parenthood, those are the two entities in the state. And Matt Kuhn came back and argued the justices, they're asking this court to hold that our Constitution, this is a quote, enshrines a right to abortion for any reason and no matter the circumstances, Kuhn said. So, and that's a quote coming from, obviously, the lifenews.com network. They're quoted capturing that quote from Kuhn. I don't know what their source is, but I mean, that's a clear statement. So I agree with Kuhn's argument. You know what I mean? Don't put it in a situation. Now, if those entities can come back to the argument of the justice, which is that if you have an argument that the state's abortion bans violate rights of its citizens, or to be specific, bans violate protections in the state's constitution,
right,
and you can present that argument, then you can.
But it's not there.
It's not there.
There isn't a protection there.
That's right.
And that's what the reason that it was fought so hard. I mean, $11 million came in from outside the Commonwealth of Kentucky to fight our clarification of our Constitution. And why? Because they want to be able to come and fight in Supreme Court every time our legislature acts.
So this is where I get in a big argument over Republican versus Democrat. They are so organized that money poured in during our own Kentucky state election, that these organizations were stood up for and paid for by entities outside of our state and funded. Now,
Well, the thing is that's not...
It's not uncommon.
That money is coming from specific sources.
Of course,
they're
Planned
not
Parenthood.
They're not. No, it's Planned
sure.
Parenthood, George Soros. It's all of these. There's
That stand to profit from
There's
abortion.
There's a handful of people with money that are feeding all of these different organizations that are actually very small organizations. These organizations don't have millions of people or hundreds of thousands or tens of thousands
They're
of people.
stood up 501(c)(3)s so that they can funnel the money
and you
through.
and I can go start one tomorrow.
We could.
We
And
can go
could
start one tomorrow.
Funnel money through them, and
That's right.
it doesn't matter how they got the money. You can now
That's
include
right,
money
because-
from a business, from a person, but the money that gets transferred from the 501(c)(3) is a legal entity to donate to a political campaign.
And they're allowed, yeah. And and there's it's a, you're allowed to have a political arm for that argues for your purpose,
Organization.
for your organization.
That's why they go after unions and all that other stuff.
Yeah,
and I would say this.
unions are allowed to have their own organization, their own political arm. But businesses aren't. Right? Businesses aren't. A corporation is not allowed to. Well, actually, that's not true. A corporation can have a political arm. That's why they have PACs. But you can't fund individual campaigns and things out of that. These other entities can't. That's what's really scary about this.
I think what's exciting for me is you talk about unions and stuff, and we've got a lot of industry coming, and I think that's one of the unique parts about Nucor and what they're doing for our community. I don't think they're unionized, so that means that those folks are going to work to make an impact for that company and that business, which only lines their pockets and not some union entity that
the
you
way
see
they
in politics for all the time.
Nucor is a very interesting method. They have a very not unique, but they have a very what I feel is a very fair payment.
Oh yeah, they're very lucrative. If you get a job and you make it through, and they have a very rigid hiring system because they're not hiring to fill seats; they're hiring to grow a company.
Yeah,
and so like I have several friends that one good friend that got hired with them, and he was explaining to me the process, and they're very meticulous. It almost sounded like an Amazon interview I went through this summer, where you go through multiple stages, and it's not the same people interviewing. It's a corporate ladder process.
But even Amazon is a little more lax to a point where they don't mind turnover.
I would say, okay, I got that for the folks working in a warehouse or that are doing delivery drivers. I'm talking more at that corporate level, the managers, the supervisors, the people that are running the show.
And they're in their district management structure.
Yeah,
they are. They are, and they do. And another thing for Amazon is, and I think is good for them, is they tend to try to hire from within. So they find those people who are going to school and things like that. They grow them up. Now they're not going to make tons of money, working in the warehouse and things, but it's meant to help as a stepping stone. I mean, UPS did that for years. I mean, you go work for UPS. They wanted to hire college students, and they still do, and they will actually pay for your college while you're working there. And then when you graduate or receive your degree, if your degree was in something that they could utilize. You get on a short list. So, that was one of the big things we used to call the UPS computer warehouse back in the day, because they were, it was basically the precursor for UPS logistics and things like that you have today. And so they were actually building computers and things for, like Dell Computer and stuff like that back in the day. And I don't know, they're still building for Dell, but they had, they had Dell computers. They had, what was that? Gateway computers, I think was over there.
Remember Gateway.
Yeah. Yeah. So they were building all those custom build computers and things that you were building were actually being built by like a UPS logistics firm, usually down here in Louisville somewhere, because this is where, all that air traffic and stuff flows through Louisville. So, I mean, a lot of people don't realize that Louisville's an international airport because UPS flies all their overnight flights basically end up in Louisville for the most part. I mean, there's some that aren't, but it's like in the 90% plus range. But yeah, so it's those companies like that, they try to grow themselves. But back to the abortion, to the Supreme Court thing, they have. This is a win, right?
I think so.
It's not the final victory. We win the war. It's a win, and we take it for like that. But we still have a long way to go. I mean, I still feel very strongly that we have a message. We have a job to do as far as getting a message out to say, listen, we need to put something in the Kentucky Constitution that says there is not a right to an abortion in Kentucky.
All right.
Okay. I feel very strongly about that. Now I'm not, I think the wording that they had for in last year's election, the opposition just lied to people.
Yep.
They lied to people. They said that they were, they put priests up on there saying that they were, trying to, that they wanted you to, that if the mother was, life was at stake, that she was just going to have to die, and that's just not true. There's nobody in Kentucky that wants that to happen. No, not a Republican, not a Democrat, not a Libertarian.
And I don't think that it stops somebody from having a conversation one-on-one with their doctor their personal doctor, not an entity like Planned Parenthood, who's for profit,
Exactly.
off of the cost of.
That's what we're trying to get rid of.
That's
is
a personal conversation between you and your doctor.
they want you to have. They want
if
women to have an abortion.
If your life is in jeopardy, they can do a C-section. They can do all kinds of things to keep you from,
That's right. That's right. And so, but Planned Parenthood was trying to take that out of the equation. They want you to have an abortion because, well, it puts money in their pockets,
yeah,
right? It puts money in their pockets, and yes, Kentucky, people should not be profiting from other people's misery, and the overall pain that women go through, after those procedures,
right.
is it's devastating to a lot of them. I won't say most, but I mean there's a lot of lifelong mental health
Sure.
repercussions because of that.
I can tell you two things. Not to get into mental health and all that other stuff, but in House bills, they did a lot of money for veterans in that situation. I would be better spending a taxpayer money to help a mother who's losing their child because of natural reasons related to their own safety, and help them get back on their feet to get through that anguishment so that they can reproduce later, you know what I mean, than to fund a baby factory,
Right.
That's sole purpose is to spit out organs and cells for the purpose of gaining new technologies, whatever. Now, I am for the fetal use of somebody in that situation. And in that situation, but not like a freaking cattle farm where you're pumping people in and out just to
Yeah.
get those stem cells and do stem cell research.
Yeah, I mean, there's and it's a hard one too for me, talking about the stem cell research and such, because the thing is that if you just free and clear allow stem cell research, you end up with, well, we need to produce more babies and have more abortions so we can have more stem cells, and then it becomes a feeder, and that's what's happened. So it needs to be restricted, or at least, in some way, shape, or form. But I think it's also a necessary. It's also a necessary technology that needs to be explored. But there's got to be a way to do this, to explore this without, without destroying life.
Right.
And I think that one thing that they're finding is you need to be able to figure out how to make Steve Lake DNA stem cells, right? Mm-hmm. And
I don't think you want to repeat another Steve Lake.
No, but you need to have. But if you need therapy, or you need some sort of stem cell.
Yeah.
My speech is a little off tonight. If you need stem cell therapy, then it needs to be. It has to. It has to be tuned to your DNA, right?
Yeah.
There's certain things about that you need to make some changes. So, it's just a. It's a hard thing. I mean, and so there's a balance that has to be made. I think that the first thing we have to do is stop killing babies, just nonstop for whatever reason, and Kentucky's done that. And the Kentucky Supreme Court, I think, ruled correctly today, and I think that yes, the door's still open, but allow them to be heard. But I would be shocked if the Kentucky Supreme Court finds that there's some inherent right to an abortion in the indicated in the Kentucky Constitution.
Well, speaking of the Kentucky Constitution, I'd like to talk about some legislative affairs, if we could.
Yeah.
All right. So a couple of things, and I'll skim through these, but I've got them up. You can go to the website. I think the Courier Journal does a good job covering them. That's where I went to tonight, but you can look it up. House Bill 1, tax cuts, is through the House and the Senate, and it is asking Governor Beshear to approve, and they're dropping the state income tax from 4.5 to 4% beginning 1 January 2024. So we already took a tax break for 23. So we'll go from 4.5 this year to 4%
in 2024,
which
and
keeps up with the growth in
keep
the
that in
economy.
perspective. When this goes through,
No,
And
it's already through the House and the
it's-
Senate.
Right, but once it's signed, it's going to go into law whether Bashir signs it or
Vetoes
not.
it or not. That's right.
Yeah, because the Kentucky legislature
own
is
the
going to
legislature.
override that. So
Well, we don't own it, but we are the majority in the legislature.
a super majority, a super majority of super majorities, basically.
What does that tell
So-
you about our unity?
So here's what's going to happen is it's going to happen,
Yep.
and when it does, that means in January 1st of 2024, Kentucky will have cut a third
Of the taxes.
of the income tax.
That's your Republican Party.
Because it started at 6%. It started at 6%, and the Republican Party has shaved that down. And here, listen, let's talk about that for a second. All the Republicans say they can do this and get it to zero without one increase in rate on sales tax,
Personal
or
property taxes.
Personal property taxes. They believe.
Well, I think
No.
that there's room to do it on sales tax. I mean, other
Well, they
states
say they
that
don't have to.
I know,
They don't
but-
have to.
But even then, I think it's okay because I'll give you a couple of reasons. I've lived in states where there's no income tax, and I'm okay with paying 8 or 9% at the store.
I am too.
Especially if, and I'll give you an example. I have known people that milk the system, live in the same state, or living in a state where they don't pay hardly any taxes because of
Yep.
their poverty level, but they stay unemployed to be in that poverty level because they get everything for free that they don't have
There's
to pay taxes
no
on.
incentive for them to go to work.
So, and then you drive by their house and they're driving a Cadillac. Or a very expensive car that has a very expensive price tag.
Or their clothes are they're wearing hundreds and thousands of dollars worth of clothes.
The
and
sales
things like
tax
that.
is very low, and they can go and buy all that stuff. I would rather see them get what they need to survive. You get your
because they're
food.
paying zero. They're
Yeah.
paying zero tax.
You get. But if you're going to go buy that big screen TV or that big fancy car and live beyond your means based off of a taxpayer and you not working, I am not for that. I would rather you pay that 8, 9, 10% and lose more of that money that we paid to you in taxes.
I mean, you think about it. If you make, let's say, a person makes $50,000 a year, right? And under the original tax rate, you were paying 6% of that, right? So if that comes out to $3,000, right? Is that right? $3,000. Yeah, $3,000. So that means you're paying $3,000 in taxes, and then a 6% sales tax. Okay, so how much do you have to buy to pay that $3,000 into an additional 3%? You have to buy $100,000 worth of goods to pay. If you let's say it went to $9,000.
Yeah.
Right, to get to the equivalent amount of money that you're going to save, right, that $3,000, you'd have to find a way to spend $100,000 to spend to pay 3% sales tax, the extra 3% sales tax.
Okay,
So-
but I'll give you another example. You have a person that's working and making your $50,000 a year, and they're paying 6%. That's fine. That's great. But you got another person that's sitting at home, the husband, the wife, and the 6 children.
and they're paying nothing,
They're not paying anything, but they're getting paid for every one of those children.
and they're only paying 6% sales tax.
And based on the amount of benefits that they're getting, equal $45,000 a year.
Yeah, I know. I mean, it's like I know people who are making because like now you can make like $60,000 a year and still have Medicaid. Pay for your health care in Kentucky. That caught me completely off guard when I heard that, and I was like, wow. I was like, where because I've made more than that for a long time now, but it's like. That's a lot of money, especially in Kentucky, $60,000 and you get and you don't have to pay that $600 a month, and that's
The
a big
bottom
deal.
line is, I am super thankful for the legislative branch for doing the work that they're doing and then taking care of the hardworking
And they're
citizens
doing it
of
for
this.
every citizen
Every
of
citizen.
Kentucky.
But the people
This
that
affects
benefited
all of
from
us.
us the most are the ones that are hardworking citizens of Kentucky.
Yeah.
And with respect, there are a lot of people with very unique situations that are not self-caused. And for that, I'm grateful for the programs that we have in place to help
Absolutely.
them. Because they're not it's the ones that I'm commenting about that are know the ins and outs of the systems and use it to their advantage versus a need versus what they could do more productively as a citizen of the Commonwealth.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. It's not about not giving a helping hand. It's just trying. How do you balance it with those who are taking advantage versus those who actually need it? And this is a good way to do it, because now, yes, it's going to affect all of them, but there's ways around that. There's more, there's ways to help out, continue to help out and be fair to all the taxpayers of Kentucky. So I think that, there's a lot to be said about this. I think that, if they can keep it at 6% and eliminate it, eliminate the income tax. Now, that doesn't mean that they're not expanding the tax base. I mean, they're doing this by expanding the tax base and saying, okay, these people who were not having to pay taxes, sales tax on things in the past, now you're going to have to pay sales tax. There's sales tax on. That's why we went through that whole thing where the fair and things like that had to pay sales tax on the ticket prices. Well, those have to be included. So
I want to get in a couple of more amendments.
Sure.
One's going to go into House Bill 173. This is the omnibus parental rights. Now, this is interesting because there's another House bill that we should dissect a little bit. House Bill 173 would ban or require parent consent. It would require parent consent for several things, subject to ongoing culture wars in education, including mask requirements, any sort of potential obscene or vulgar materials, and therapy sessions. It would also require teachers to tell parents if their child asks to use a different pronoun or a name, or if their gender expression begins to change. And right now, House Bill 102, sponsored by Senator Lindsey Tichner, Republican Smithfield, is an identical House Bill in 177. House Bill 177, sponsored by Republican Shane Baker. Representative Somerset is another similar but not identical measure. Now, I want to come back down to the one down here. House Bill 5, I think it is. Find the library books, that's not it. Criminal justice, juvenile justice, state bill, death penalty, bathroom, gender affirming care, conversation. There was another, I just saw it, but it was the opposite of that, where they were wanting to, oh my gosh, I must have went so fast, but it was another House bill that was actually giving more rights to students, but I'll find it in a second. But I think that's great that we can get into the conversation about parents having a vote and not letting the education system dictate how your children will be influenced.
I tell you what the big deal here is that most parents didn't think that they needed to. Most parents thought that they had an inherent right that it wasn't that long ago that they had to, the teachers could spank kids in school, but they had to notify the parents.
That's right.
Right. And now they don't spank kids in school, but now they want to go, they want to help them figure out how to cut their genitals off and things like this. And without ever having to tell the parent anything. And that's insane to most parents. Most parents, I mean, we've stood by and let the teachers unions inflict these policies on us. Now, this is not the teachers.
So
it's the unions that are creating this situation.
I got it. So great. And this is where I don't agree with this one, and maybe I'm wrong. I'll read it. Which
one is it?
It's House Bill 150, and it's about pronouns. And this is Senator Max Wise, the representative of Campbell's bill, and it's SB 150.
He's the one that's running for. He's the one that's running for lieutenant governor with Kelly Craft.
I got it, but he's saying would allow teachers. It allows teachers to misgender students by using pronouns aligned with the student's biological sex, even if the student doesn't identify with them, which means it's saying teachers, if he's a male, he's a male. You can't, you don't have to align with the student. even at this, and
No, it's actually
it also requires schools to give parents a 2-week notice before any lessons on human sexuality and allow them to opt out. And this passed the Senate Education Committee and is now onto the full Senate.
Yeah, so I'm looking here. It says amend KRS 190.0.10 to amend the definition of that's not the same one. What are you in? Are you in House Bill 150?
It's in Senate Bill 150.
Oh, Senate Bill.
It's called Senate Bill 150.
Gotcha. I was in the House bills.
No,
Oh,
and
this
one is on pronouns. This is from Max Wise.
All right,
And it would allow teachers to misgender students by using pronouns aligned with the student's biological sex. It gives the teachers the power to say, I'm sorry that you're a they or a them, but you are a he.
in this classroom, you're going to be a he.
And that's
So I agree with that.
I do too. But
I agree with that.
But it's gonna bump with the other one on the omnibus parents' rights, because if they almost should be merged right now, the House bill and the Senate bill.
Well, there's an opportunity for these to merge as well.
Your teacher now has to tell you, well, your son is arguing that he's a they, or your daughter is arguing that they're a they in class, and then they're forced to have to report that to the parent. But it gives the teacher the right to say, you're a he, go in the men's room or whatever. I don't know. Your thoughts?
Well, I mean, my thought is that, we have a biological sex.
Yep.
Right? Male and female. There's only two, right?
Mm-hmm. One could be standing up and the other one can't. They can, but
you just have to
they're not
be careful
accommodated
with
for
that,
that.
because there's some that can, that's.
But my point is
I know what your point
a male
is,
can
but-
still go to a male restroom. Don't care how you associate, and a woman can go to a woman restroom. Don't care how you associate. And if there is a phobia of whatever you're concerned with, woman on woman, man on man, that there are laws in place for that. Sexual assault, sexual harassment, all of that other stuff. So if you sway one way, doesn't mean that you still get to go to the other person gender's bathroom. You can go to your own bathroom regardless of how you sexualize yourself.
Yeah, it's not. Yeah, because there's a difference between gender sex and sexuality.
Yes.
Right. So whatever your sexuality is in your in your privacy, your home, whoever you want to associate with, what have you, that's your business, and you should never. And I will fight for your right not to be persecuted over that.
Yeah.
Right. I think that we all will. But when you're right from it says when you're trying to take a right that says I have to call you something or I have to say something that you're not just to fulfill your own internal thoughts.
Yeah, I think it's
That's
empowering
wrong.
for both these bills to be merged, because it gives the power back to the parent to have a vote. And it does leave the confusion out of the teachers.
I mean, let's face it, they're both going to pass. So
let's hope so.
yeah, and the question is will they there'll be vetoes and things about it. And this will be a big. These are both going to be. These are both going to come up in the governor's race this year.
Yeah,
it's going to be.
I'm going to give you another caveat, and this will be the last one I bring up. But in conjunction with that, we're talking about the parents being able to have a vote, and that you don't get to make that vote, teacher, for my kid. Right? Out of both of these bills. That's what I feel like it gives back to the parents. And I think it also gives the teachers there are a lot of faith-based teachers even in our own community. And it makes it difficult for them who have a very, foundation in their values and their Christian beliefs. But what I think is even more interesting is going to be Senate Bill number 5, which is parent complaints, and a pathway for them to create a process to handle complaints about things like library books and education materials. I would hope that would extend on to complaints filed against those who don't follow these other two types of House bill or Senate bills and things of that nature. But I think collectively, what I'm seeing here that's maybe even happening in the Senate, and I'd like to spend some more time looking at the House, but it looks like there's a lot of great work that's being done to give parents some rights to include where their choice, school choice amendment it is letting
what-
parents to decide.
What, is there a number on the school choice? Are
It is. It's House Bill 174, but that one would put a constitutional amendment on the 2024 ballot so voters can decide whether public funds should be allowed to follow students to private schools. And I think that's absolutely right.
I believe so. Yeah.
Because I think that our private schools, in
Why?
some cases,
Why were schools started? Right?
To educate our youth.
It was not started to give teachers unions a place to work. It was started to
educate.
ensure that we had that we educated our children, that our children had an opportunity to be educated across the board, no matter how much money you make or what have you. Then why does it have to go to a public school?
that's right.
Right? It doesn't.
That's right.
The thing is that they've
But
been
the
fighting
school
this
board
because
owns
they
that.
well, because what happened throughout the 20th century is the people who the socialists and things who want certain things to happen have been embedding themselves in school systems because
And college.
in college, the school system completely.
When
So
everybody was allowed to go to college, boy, you converted an entire army of liberalism.
It did. It's not allowed. They were almost forced to, because what happened? Every company now says, "Oh, you have to have at first it was an associate's degree. Now you have to have a bachelor's degree." Well, you know what the biggest difference between an associate's degree and a bachelor's degree is? An associate's degree means that you know how to do the work, right? You've worked in that. You have the ability to learn and participate in your industry. But a bachelor's degree adds all the arts, right? It adds all the arts and the and all the humanities and things like that into it that most people don't believe that they even need to be able to be employed. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not downing any bachelor's degree. I think that bachelor's degrees are good because they teach you how to write. They teach you how to communicate in both written and verbal forms. There's a lot of good to them. But there's also a lot of fluff out there that is indoctrinating people.
So I got an amazing quote, Thomas Jefferson, when we were standing up the foundations of our country. A couple of quotes. Education and inform the whole mass of the people. They are the only sure reliance of the preservation of our liberty. But he goes on to say in a later quote that there is nothing more unequal than the equal treatment of unequal people. And I don't mean that from a racist or a disrespectful, but there was another quote that he said that the nation expects to be ignorant and free in a state of civilization. It expects what never was and never will be, which means education is on the forefront of getting out to everybody. But there are only certain individuals that can exceed levels of education because they are inherently able to be learned. Does that make sense? And I only bring that up because I believe a lot. We had Martin Luther King last month. We got President's Day coming up this Monday. So I thought it'd be kind of cool to bring up Thomas Jefferson. And it ties into all these educational focuses simply because our education system is still based off of the same 1950s industrial age model. And I'm glad to see a lot of these education systems that pop up that help people explore greater opportunities or greater learning in vocational trades and other industries, that they don't need to go on to college to do what we just spent.
Well, I mean, there used to be trade schools everywhere.
Well, I agree, but why do we need them to go to college after they go to trade school when they've already got a skill?
You don't.
Then why are teachers telling our students that, Mark?
Because it supports their own. It supports their own industry. It's like saying,
I agree.
It's like having it. The one thing that we do in this country that's so wrong is we create laws and regulations, and we allow those laws and regulations are created by people in the industry. So what do? So that we talk about how the internet is, the social media it needs to be regulated. Well, who's the biggest supporter of regulating the internet or the social media right now? It's Facebook. Why? Because they're going to be asked to write the regulations, and their regulations are not going to be for the people. They're going to be for protecting Facebook, so no one else can jump through the hoop. Right? They get to close off the hoop. That's what regulations do. That's how when you regulate an industry, you're regulating an industry so that nobody else can get in. And subsequently, the people who are already there are basically you're basically fortifying their position so that they're always going to be there. Facebook needs to die at some point.
I don't disagree.
All right, Google will have to die someday, right? And if you're protecting it over and over and over again, then you're not allowing room for the next thing.
I agree.
And and you'll be stuck in this boat for 100 years.
I got a favorite quote to close on that again from Thomas Jefferson, and we'll transition into what we got coming up. Bigotry is the disease of ignorance of morbid minds, enthusiasm of the free and buoyant. Education and free discussion are the antidotes of both. And that's where I'm going to leave it lay. So, transitioning, we got a lot coming up in the coming weeks, Mark. I know we talked about Lincoln Days. I think we're getting locked down.
First things coming up is the Republican Party regular meeting will be on Monday at 7 o'clock. It'll be at 2714 Brandenburg Road here in Brandenburg. We're actually sitting in the building right now.
We call it the train station.
Yeah, it's the train station.
But nobody comes here to die.
Yeah, this is where you come to get educated.
You get alive.
So, and then we have moved our Lincoln Day dinner is being moved from April 13th out to April 12th. That's going to be a Tuesday. It's very abnormal for us to have an event like that on Tuesday, but we're trying to accommodate some schedules and things. So we've gotten some commitments now from like Daniel Cameron and some of the other folks that are running for some of the other offices that are going to come and speak to us. And again, we'll carry that on our podcast right here. Let's see. Don't forget you have the primary coming up in May. The date has escaped me. Is it May 17th?
I think you're right, but let me check it real fast.
Not the 17th. It's the 16th.
November the 8th, that one, not this one. Primary.
I think it's the 16th or the 23rd. I think it's the 16th.
23 primary.
I think it's May 16th.
We're not getting there fast enough, folks.
Yeah, sorry.
Election 23 primary education, not there. That's not it. Wow, that one didn't come up fast enough.
Wow.
So while you're looking that up, so last week I took a trip to Washington, D.C.
How'd that go?
I was there all week. I got to tell you, the first time I've ever been able to walk up to the National Monument, Washington Monument, walk up to the ticket booth, grab a ticket, and walk right up to the tower and get all the way up into the monument and then all the way up the elevator without a wait.
Wow.
Didn't even have to book it in advance. It was a treasure. I got photos from every angle. I think I even did a post because I was at the nation's capital. I actually got to go in and tour the nation's capital that week with some very highly.
I haven't been to DC in a long time.
I go once a quarter
years.
now.
It's been quite a while since I've been there, and but it was it's such a busy place usually.
It is. I was at so I spent a day at the Pentagon, spent a day at the mall, and I was at the Capitol building. Still like to get back. They make it difficult. I think I'm gonna have to get in touch with Brett or Rand Paul. And by the way, on both way up and the way back, guess who was on the same plane with me?
Oh, I know who it was, but go ahead.
Senator Mitch McConnell.
Yeah.
So I got the whisper in his ear, and I said, "Hey, sir, I just want you to know, you might want to keep your eyes on Meade County because we're turning this thing around." And I said, "We flipped that whole county." And he looked at and he said, "That's good news." And I just kept walking off mildly on the plane, but he did take time to take a photo. Thank you, Senator Mitch McConnell. It was a pleasure meeting you. I know you were doing your due diligence. And the week you got to remember, I was there during the week that this is the week that the State of the Union address.
Oh yeah.
The mockery. You know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
So it was quite interesting getting to see him on the flight up and the flight back. And I said, "Hey, sir, good to see you again." And he looked up. He said, "Well, I guess it is." And I politely took my seat.
You know let's see the
Did you find it?
no. It's strange. It's not coming up on the election schedule or anything. It says I look for the Kentucky election schedule, and it's not popping up there. Here's the election calendars and schedule. You would think it would be in there, but it's not in there. It says 2023 calendar. And I popped it open, and I'm looking at it, and it says
May 16th, 2023.
Where did you find that at? Because it's not showing up in here. I have a May 16th date in here, but it says something about
Ballotopia. It says statewide election dates May
There we
16th, 2023, and the primary will be November the 7th of 2023.
so the general. The general will be November.
November 7th of 2023 for
So,
the general.
but anyway, so May 16th will be the primary, and so make sure that you have to be registered in your party, the party that you want to be that you want to vote in. So if you Republicans will vote for Republicans, Democrats will vote for Democrats. So if you are not already registered, if you're already registered in Meade County, you had to be registered by December 31st in the party that you want to participate in. Now, anybody new to the county coming in or new voters, maybe you're just turning 18, and if you're turning 18 before on or before election day, the general election in November, by November 7th, then you're eligible to vote in the primary. Even if you'll only be 17 at the time of the primary, you're eligible to vote because you will be 18 and a valid voter at the general election. So you can go ahead and register now as a new voter. And I think you have until, I think it's mid-April, April 15th or something like that. I don't know if it's tax day exactly or not, but you're allowed to go ahead and vote to be eligible for the election coming up. So for the primary.
Hey, so I want to transfer into the other thing. Next week, we've got Sydney Durham. I saw a post that we've even commented on, and Sydney said this plainly at the town hall, which I will let you guys know. Judge Koch is doing town halls at every district. So if you got issues or concerns about what's happening in the county, he's coming to you. All you got to do is show up and talk. But the last town hall we had in Muldra, they're basically stating that if you have not paid the fees that you owed to Meade County regarding the integration of your private road into a county road system, you've got to pay your bill.
Yeah, but you should have received a letter.
That's right.
Right. If you owed something, that you probably received a letter. Now, don't panic if you received that letter and you don't know anything about it. Call. Right. Call the office. That letter is intended to be a conversation starter. Now we're going to go into that next week with Sydney. Sydney's going to come on the show. I don't want to give it all
away, but
she's going to come on the show. She's going to explain. We're all going to talk about what the law is and why it's happening and things like that. But
and I will tell you, those fees are listed in your deed, so you just got to go back to your deed too. But we'll talk about how you find out more about that and what your roles are. Go ahead. Yeah. I'm sorry.
So speaking of the town hall is going to be Monday. It's a week from this Monday, so it's going to be Monday. What is that? The 27th.
That should be like the first week in March, isn't it?
So no, it's going to be the 27th. So this week is this Monday is our Republican Party meeting
and President's Day,
and we still will meet even though it's President's Day. The 27th will be, I believe think they're going to do it on the Mondays. They're doing it on I think it's going to be the fourth Monday of each month. This month it's going to be in District 2, which is the Doe Run, the Weldon Doe Run, Rock Haven, and Doe Valley precincts. And it's going to be held over at the Swim and Tennis Club. And it's going to be open to everyone in the public to go in. So over at the Swim and Tennis Club, I think it's going to be at 7:00 or is it 6:30. I think
6:30. We will be there and set up to broadcast it live, so you can hear what members of Meade County District there are having to say, and they might have some of the same questions you have in your own district.
Yeah. So I don't know who all's going to be there. I know Judge Koch will be there.
He usually brings the whole crew.
Eli Dix will be there. Well, I think there's some rules around, do they bring everybody or not? Because does it create a quorum? if it's is it become an official meeting if they all come. So they're,
No,
so
I'm talking about you'll have the magistrate for your district will be
you have
there.
your magistrate for your district, usually one other magistrate.
Yeah. You might get Sidney Durham there to answer any legal questions on behalf of the county. They're all different elected positions, but
Susan Masterson will be there for the clerk's office.
And if sheriff's available, he'll try
Sheriff.
to stop by, or a representative.
Yeah, and that just depends on schedules and things.
Yeah.
So everyone's available. Everyone's trying to be available, or send some sort of representative that will be able to answer your question.
And Troy's trying to do this so that you're hearing it from the horse's mouth, or as close to the horse's mouth.
So he's hearing it from the people's mouth,
That's
right? So
right.
he wants to know what you think.
That's right.
And what your problems you're having are, and how do you feel? What do you feel the county needs to do? There's a lot of things that's going on. Muldrow has its District 1 has its issues, and well, a lot of those got aired out last month. We were all
did.
there, right?
And some
District
of our
2 is
other
going to have
counties.
theirs. Yeah, District 2 is going to have theirs. And I'm sure when we get to District 6, we're going to be talking. We're going to be talking a lot about quarries and property. The planning and zoning and things like
Yeah.
that. Planning and zoning hits everywhere, but specifically out there in out in Battletown area and all that, everybody's concerned about the quarries and things out there.
Yeah.
So that's going to be, and really, maybe we can do a show on the quarries at some point
Sure.
in the near future.
I think it'd be good to get Judge on here and talk about some of those, especially to address a lot of the issues after we get the second one under his belt. But and what are they doing about it in the county? I think, a lot of work has been done.
And they're working really hard. They did pass the comprehensive. They did pass the planning and zoning. What is it called? The darn. I meant to put that down to a. Meant to have that in a note for us today. But they passed the. They had they had the final reading, and they passed the
Minutes.
No. I'm talking about the. Oh my gosh, the
Well, I'd help you, but I'm getting over
the compliance and the compliance part of the planning and zoning where they're going to have the code enforcement. They passed the code enforcement provision so that they can have so now. Which is, there was a gentleman there. I can't remember his name now, but he was there. He'd been coming for like three years or something like that, as they've been trying to poke through this. And this has been something that's been on the books and the fiscal court's been trying to pass for, probably 10 or plus years. And it's somewhat controversial because now, what it says is, basically what they're saying is, now, there's some additional, and we'll get when we have Sydney on next week, we can talk to her a little bit about how
Sounds
that's
good.
written and such. But it's basically telling us that it's putting some meat behind it, if you will. So, hey, something I want to leave a little thought tonight. Something I've been reading in my Bible study and such is, the Bible says in Matthew. In the Beatitudes, that Jesus said that the meek shall inherit the earth, right? So blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth, right? Or something to that effect. And one thing that kind of gets me is this: what does the word meek mean? Right? If, without looking it up, what does the word meek mean? And so I want people to think about that out there because, a lot of times you think of the meek as weak, and the weaker people of their society, but that's not what it is.
I'm going to give you a movie definition reference that depicts it all. It is it's a Thor movie.
Okay.
And it's when Loki steals the staff and he holds it up and he tells all the people to bow and one man stands up. I'll leave it there. Go watch that clip.
Yeah. So, but meek is about meek. The meek are strong.
Nope. Meek are not violent or strong.
No, they're strong. They're the strong that know when not to yield, to wield their sword.
They're enduring
they
of
have
injury and with patience and without resentment.
exactly. They have the ability to wield their sword, but they know when not to. That's what that's who the meek are. So we should not think of meek as the meek as being we need to be weak and feeble. We should wield our sword with patience and know when not to strike. So I think that's something that really hit home in my Bible study this week, and I thought I wanted to share that tonight. With
Very
everyone.
good.
So,
I like it. It's like choose your battles.
choose your battles. Not sometimes you just need to know. You need to have patience.
Hey, listen, Meade County, if you get to watch this on the backflip, thank you so much for tuning in to us. Glad to produce another show.
Yeah.
Have a good night.
Had a great time. Good night, everybody.